A lot of people expect a carnivore diet to give effortless fat loss and weight loss. There are a lot of common mistakes that can be corrected though. And be sure to wait till the end of this video, the #1 fat loss killer. I agree with it. I'm Dr. Ryan Brooks. Welcome to my channel where I review and debunk nutritional misinformation. And if there are some internet pundits, influencers who talk about carnivore, Dr. Chaffee is one of them. And so we want to learn from his experience, his followers' experience about the carnivore diet. Be sure to wait till the end. Here's 25 years of brutally honest advice on carnivore in less than 10 minutes. The most common reason that people fail doing a carnivore diet is that they're not actually doing a carnivore diet in the first place. People think that doing a carnivore diet means that they'll eat a lot more meat and this takes care of everything. While meat has all the nutrients that we need, it is not the only factor in optimal health. While you need these essential nutrients in their correct form and proportion, you also need to avoid things that cause harm. A major facet of a carnivore diet is removing all of these things that cause harm. So while people eat a lot more meat and they replace a lot of other things with that meat, and that's good, they won't see the full benefits of a carnivore diet until they get rid of all of those other things. Even dairy can trip people up, especially for weight loss. Dairy has casomorphins that trigger the baby animal to grow and get bigger because babies are vulnerable. So they need some stimulus to tell them to grow big and strong as quickly as possible. When we get these same chemicals in our body, it tells us to grow as well, but we grow out instead of up. So eating milk and dairy products is a classic weight loss stall, or even a way to gain weight on a carnivore diet. Also, people think that artificial sweeteners, just because they don't have sugar or calories in them, means that it's okay to eat. But really, these are just chemicals. We are not combustion engines. We don't burn our food for energy. We are chemical factories, and we use chemicals and they make chemical reactions. When you put stevia in your body, this can lower fertility rate as shown in animal studies, lowering a fertility rate by 55% compared to controls with just 1 serving of stevia. This shouldn't surprise anyone because stevia comes from the stevia plant in South America. It has been used in South America in places such as Paraguay over 1,000 years as birth control. So why are we thinking that this is safe to put in the drinking supply? Well, so hang on. Always consider the source. You've heard me say that in prior videos. Dr. Chaffee is not a nutrition expert, a dietitian. He's a MD. I've met Dr. Chaffee and he's super smart for sure. And so what we're seeing is the description of things that actually can be consumed. In my experience, you can eat a stevia flavored or sweetened drink and be fine and have it work. And you can have dairy in small amounts and do fine. But what I'm seeing here is, carnivore is a subset of low carb keto kind of diet. And the idea that you have to do that is not really correct. We don't really know who needs to do it. Most people gravitate toward carnivore because they have some sort of medical issue that isn't fixed by any other means, including a keto diet. If you start on a carnivore diet thinking that's the only way to do things and you take advice from Dr. Chaffee, you might be trapped. You might feel that this is the only way to do it. And you might get bored with the foods and so I introduce to the patients who come to me thinking carnivore was the only way to do it, that there are other ways, and maybe a little bit of these sweeteners or a little bit of the dairy is going to make you have variety, help you sustain it, and then the amount of this is debatable. So I'm kind of calling into question the dismissive because these things aren't natural, because they have this other use that you shouldn't have them. Although he has a point that it might be a problem for you specifically. Things like monk fruit sugar, also called erythritol, has been shown in recent studies to have an increased risk of blood clots. Also, even though they're artificial sweeteners, they don't contain carbohydrates, they have been shown in studies to still trigger an insulin response. And insulin is the fat storage hormone, and you can get reactive hypoglycemia as a result. And it can also trigger carb cravings. Yeah, so I don't agree with that. And this is a nuance of those studies. I'm very aware of them. The ones that say erythritol causes blood clots and even other issues that insulin secretion. The amount of insulin secretion in that particular paper was almost negligible. I mean, it's also the we're getting into the review of studies here, where there are studies that have statistical significance, but it's not clinically significant. And I know Dr. Chaffee knows the difference between these things. But so he's pulling data to support the argument, which a lot of people do. And actually, it's possible that you may have a problem with those things. Even though most people do fine, he's also preaching to the people who are having trouble. And so here are things that you could do to fix, troubleshoot a certain area if you're trying to do this kind of a diet. So, not to be confused with the idea that nobody can have stevia and nobody can have monk fruit or erythritol or other, I think those are very useful sweeteners to have to get people off sugar. So, these are all very similar approaches, and I'm afraid we're left up to finding the one that works for us by trial and error. Another reason that people have a hard time could be because they're not eating enough fat. We have been told our entire lives that if you eat fat, you'll get fat, but that simply is not true. Your body has a limited capacity to absorb fat, and after you run out of bile, you will not absorb 90% or more of the fat that you eat. Your body has 5 organs working in concert just to absorb fat. Your stomach starts breaking food down. Your liver makes bile. Your gallbladder stores it. Your pancreas starts making enzymes like lipase to break down the fat. And the bile emulsifies it, and it's absorbed by your small intestine. So why would we have 5 organs all working together to absorb fat if fat were bad for us or harmful in some way? Our body knows what it's doing. Nature knows what it's doing. Biology knows what it's doing. And if our body didn't want that fat and didn't find it beneficial, it would not go to such lengths to absorb it in the first place. So if you undereat fat, you can actually slow down your progress. There are essential nutrients in fat that you cannot find anywhere else. It's not just a calorie source. There's vitamin D3, K2, retinol, vitamin E, EPA, choline, so many more things that you have to have in order to live and thrive. Well, so this is an issue of saying something that then gets interpreted in the way someone wants to hear it. So if you're in a clinic, and remember, of the people I follow and that you should follow, I think online, if you're looking for clinically relevant information, is listen to people who've been in the clinic. In my clinic, if I tell someone they can eat more fat, often it goes to the extreme. And if they're trying to lose fat weight off their body, it's too far. So, we're talking about giving advice and qualitative sorts of nuggets of advice, and that can often go off the rails. Too much cheese, too much cream, having more butter, sticks of butter, that sort of thing. When you're trying to lose fat off your body, that's not a good idea to do that. I would love to see research wrapped around how you give the advice on eating a carnivore or keto kind of diet, the nuance, how people hear and interpret the idea of just, you need to eat more fat. There are some people for whom that's just a license to become a consumer of way too much food. And then, remember, we're trying to just get everyone to eat less when you're losing weight or reversing diabetes. We could use diets, drugs, pills, shots, surgery, but we're not trying to eat more. We're trying to get people to eat less in the big picture. And lastly, plants actually are trying to kill you. Anybody who has studied botany can tell you this. And maybe some people who have, maybe leave some comments down below to that effect. Plants have no problem with you dying as long as they get to live. It's kill or be killed out in the wild, and it's survival of the fittest. And if you don't have proper defenses against something trying to eat you, you're going to die. And that's why plants have developed chemical defenses in order to stop and deter animals and insects from eating them. Well, at first that sounded kind of bizarre and outlandish, but I have to say that it has a ring of truth, and that it was helpful for me to kind of overcome my resistance to the idea that we, could eat without vegetables. We could live without vegetables. The idea that humans eat things that hurt. If you think about it, the hot peppers, horseradish, salsa, that wasabi, basically that hurts, and yet we go for it again. Some people will go for it again and again. So that stimulation that could be perceived as the plant trying to kill you is something that humans, the people that we can be, may actually want. And so it's one thing to say that that's, they're trying to kill you, but that may be why the person is consuming it, is because it does hurt or gives that sensory feeling. So it's one thing to know that and one thing to live it. The interesting thing about plants, because they can't run away, that they don't have motility in general, they put things in their leaves to deter, even in the fruit of some of the plants, to deter the mammals, humans being one of them, to consume them. And that helped me it's called face validity, or kind of the common sense of it, that helped me to kind of be comfortable with the idea that maybe people don't have to have vegetables and have to have plants. I remember doing a study north of Vancouver in the First Nations community, and they didn't really have a custom of eating plants. And they would go down to Vancouver and ask you, why are they eating plants? And it was a salad, So there are some cultures that really never did have salad and greens and vegetables. But why humans want things to hurt? Let me know down below, if you like that sensory horseradish, why that becomes something that you get almost addicted to. We have categorized, classified, and named nearly 1 million defense chemicals that plants make in order to defend themselves. And this is why out of the 400,000 species of plants in the world that we know of, almost every single one will kill humans. Of the ones left over, some of these are still harmful over time, if eaten to a certain extent. But even in low doses, if eaten continually over years, these can cause harm. It's not me saying this. This is according to the WHO, who has an entire website dedicated to natural toxins found in food, where they list all the different plant toxins, mushroom toxins, and algae toxins that can get into our food supply and can cause serious illness, cancer, or even death in both humans and livestock. It's on their website. Google WHO natural toxins found in food. There are things like phytic acid, which is an anti-nutrient, which will block out different minerals from being absorbed. There's oxalates in the form of oxalic acid and otherwise that can bind to different nutrients, but also turn into crystals in your body and damage organs. The number one cause of kidney stones in humans are oxalate stones, calcium oxalate stones, because oxalates get in your bloodstream and strip out the calcium from your blood supply, which then has to strip calcium out of your bones in order so your heart doesn't stop. Then there are things like lectins, tannins, saponins, protease inhibitors, and so on that can all cause serious harm. The lectins in beans and legumes can be so toxic that even 5 red kidney beans, untreated or uncooked, have put people into the hospital according to the WHO. So through technology, cooking, fermenting, and chemical processes, we have been able to turn otherwise toxic plants into more edible versions by lowering the toxic load and increasing bioavailability. And the simple fact that we have to do this means that we are not biologically designed to do it ourselves. So we have not evolved to do this. These are not what is meant for us. And so while we have figured out how to survive on plant-based foods that we're not designed for, it is clear that that is not optimal for us. So anytime you're having a stall or you're not getting the results that you want, think to yourself, are you eating anything except fatty meat and water? If the answer is yes, cut it out and see how you go. The vast majority of people will do great that way. Some people take longer to heal than others, and everyone starts from a different place, but if you eat optimal nutrition, your body will be optimally nourished. And if you avoid toxic elements, your body will be less toxic. It's as simple as that. You can boil down nutrition for all species and all forms of life to this. Eat what you're biologically designed to eat and nothing else, and you'll be fine. Well, another provocative video from Dr. Chaffee, who says that plants are out to kill you. I think this is very helpful if you're trying to fix a medical issue or really trying to make a carnivore diet work for you. The things that he's telling you to eliminate can be consumed by some people. And I've seen people consume dairy and do fine, consume stevia and other non-sugar sweeteners and do fine, consume some vegetables and leafy greens and do fine. But there may be a subset, you might be one, who does better by not having those things. It's an area that is really crying out for more research to not just say, some people can do this. We want to know what % of people will do better if they do this. Or what are the nuances in how you teach this way of eating? We just published a paper with a case study of someone who reversed a serious rheumatologic problem called palindromic rheumatism. And by his own research, he figured out that a carnivore diet might be helpful. and he reversed his problem without the medical attention. In fact, they told him not to do it, and we had that paper published. It's just a case study. Doesn't mean that if you take 10 people in a row, they'll all have that benefit, but it's something that you might try if you're at wit's end or the doctors are just talking about medications. Again, a great video about carnivore. Not everyone has to do it. If you're, carnivore tired, you might be keto curious and add in some vegetable matter and dairy and do fine. I'm thinking too that your body's ability to tolerate foods changes over time. I've seen some people kind of calm down by doing a carnivore or keto diet. Their food tolerability and tolerances change, and they can reincorporate foods that they couldn't have before without some sort of intolerance, nausea or diarrhea, that sort of thing. So is that a microbiome change? Is it a change in inflammation internally? More research is needed to really figure that out. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on further contact. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our YouTube membership for early access and exclusive live Q&As with me. Just click the join button below or support us with a PayPal in the description.